NFL Week 10. Ron and I are going to have a conversation about last week, next week, and the trade deadline, and whatever else Ron has on his mind, as well as viewer questions and answers. How you doing, Ron?
Didn't get a chance to say hi to you before show, so hi.
I was running a little late. I'm having issues.
Yeah, football-wise, everything's fine. The other stuff falling apart, but football is a great distraction right now. So when I'm working on it, it's doing fine. We did have an off-air discussion late in the week where I don't know if you ended up doing this, but I know you were not playing the Sunday night game and at the time, not the Monday night game. And you talked about how that freed up your time a little bit. Pretty much
Yes.
same with me. I decided not to really get involved in the prop market or anything on Monday night. So I had a free night. So it made things a little easier.
Yeah, it was a much needed little gap that I'm not used to. I did end up having some interest in both games in the long run, but not enough that was time consuming.
Yeah.
So, did you have a good week last week?
Yeah, if I didn't have such a fascination with the New York Giants, it would have been a perfect Sunday. No losses. Trying to think. I went against them against Pittsburgh. I've lost. Geez, I'm looking at my notes. It's good to check. I've bet on the Giants 5 times this year, which probably should be a criminal offense. I'm 2-3, but I've lost the last 3 times I bet on the Giants, and I'm 1-0, maybe 2-0 against them.
Well, today is a joyous day. It's a day that I'm going to relish and savor. And it's actually kind of overwhelming that the numbers come in, and I'm not going to be betting the New Orleans Saints, and it's just a burden. It's such a burden lifted. Finally, that I've been able to break this vicious cycle of being required to bet the Saints.
Yeah, well, one thing we talked about, I really didn't understand how even models, power ratings for sure, there's no looking back, but models, I was confused too, how the Saints could be 7-point favorites or 7.5-point favorites against anybody on the road. Even if it's Carolina, the matchup didn't really show it. And so I got one last best bet in against Dennis Allen. And that one was never really in doubt as far as the spread.
You and your Monday morning quarterbacking, the Saints were healthy again, and then Olave goes out right away again, and then it's just ridiculous.
No, this was before the game. This was first guessing, not second guessing. The Saints healthy again, yes. Derek Carr, did he look like he just hit the ground running from being out of action for 4 or 5 weeks or whatever it was? Didn't look like it at all to me. He threw a pass that got receivers in harm's way. And then tell me again, Chris, all the carries and all the touches Taysom Hill had in the fourth quarter. Take your time, by the way. Yeah. Take your time in terms of how many touches Taysom Hill got in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So you're dealing with a guy who career-wise averages 5.4 yards per carry, gets in the end zone, catches passes, throws passes, and then you don't even use him.
Oh, I see the Turners are back in Las Vegas again.
Yeah, he's
Norman Scott.
Nice, fresh, young voice, huh?
Oh, God. You want to go back to last week? You want to go to current? You want to just run through anything that was worth commenting on from last week?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it a little bit brief. I'm looking at it. I think we can continue to get used to the way the Chargers win football games. They just do that their way. It's not exciting to the general public. But when the dust settles, they don't allow many points. They don't miss many tackles. They shorten games. They keep games lower scoring. This has been the formula ever since Harbaugh was hired, ever since they drafted certain types of players. And we've seen him stay true to what they are going to be, what his vision of the Chargers are going to be. And I think we have to continue to impress the point that this is the way the Chargers are going to look when they're good. This is the way the Chargers are going to look when they're bad. That would be my Charger comment. Let me throw one more at you before you comment or answer me a couple of ones. I found the Rams-Seattle game pretty fascinating in terms of the way it played out. It really was a toss-up game, in my opinion. I ended up with the Rams on an early play because we had talked about Seattle didn't establish the home field advantage of late, and they were still in transition, still a really young team. But that's a coin flip division. We don't know whether San Francisco is going to flip the switch. Arizona's ahead of the Rams and Seattle. Very interesting division.
Well, I brought it up, I believe 2 weeks ago, that Arizona at plus 500 was worth a look because their strength of schedule going forward is pretty weak comparatively. And the other teams are just beating each other up.
Yeah. Same thing happened to Denver. We saw a schedule imbalance, and I talked about the fact that there was really a scheme problem for Denver. They didn't have the right scheme to attack Baltimore over the top. Basically, what Sean Payton wants to do is get quick releases, quick throws out of his quarterback, strong accuracy, all the good things that make Bo Nix a factor against weaker teams. But Baltimore, you need to challenge them. You need to go over the top. You need to do some different things. And I didn't think Denver was equipped to do that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was moving on to something else. So go ahead and talk about that one.
Well, I knew that Denver was probably going to be a tall order. It's definitely a step up in class. It wasn't a complete disaster. But even I think they fared better than the score indicated. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but
they're just not a big boy team. They're an average team that plays a fourth place schedule. So that's how we handicap. That's how we handicapped it at the beginning of the year, anyway.
I think Nix is stabilizing or improving as the season goes along at a nice steady pace. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's confident in the system. I think he's doing the things Peyton wants him to do. I just don't think they're equipped to go against the better teams right now. But hey, Denver's win total 5.5. Nobody expected them to do that, and they're on pace to win 8 or 9 games. So no problems with how they're going about business, but every once in a while they're going to run up against a team that their scheme doesn't fit. 2 coaching takeaways for me, because I watched the Philadelphia game a little bit. Boy, that Nick Sirianni can't make a decision to save his life. I mean, you have to, when you're up 16, you kick an extra point to be up three scores. I don't care what the situation is. And then you don't do some of the other stupid things that they did on 4th and 1 and 4th and 2 late in the game when you're only up 5 points. They chased 6 points in that particular game. Unbelievable. And then I did think that Tampa made a curious decision not going for 2 at the end of the game last night against Kansas City. You really don't want to give Mahomes the ball back.
Well, I do have a note here that there were 4 teams that scored a touchdown in the last 2 minutes of the game that chose to kick extra points instead of going for 2, and all 4 of them lost.
It's unless you're dealing with severe weather issues or low scoring issues, or you think the other team is at an offensive disadvantage. In the NFL, you need to be going for 2.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's going to be personnel issues or just situations that dictate that you go against what is just the general type consensus look at whether to go for two or not. But, my perspective on it is you only have a 92% chance or a 93% chance of getting your PAT. So you're going to miss 7 or 8% of those PATs right off the bat. Secondly, you probably have the defense on their heels. It's a little chaotic. If you have it planned ahead of time, I feel like the momentum is on your side, and you should be taking advantage of that momentum, unless you have a personnel issue or some other variable that isn't overt. But you only have a 50% chance of winning the coin toss. And when you're facing high caliber quarterbacks like Pat Mahomes in a high leverage situation, or you're on the road, or you just got, the other team's disoriented, why would you want a chance at not seeing the ball again? I mean, I've got to imagine that Mahomes is more than a 50% shot of scoring a touchdown. So if you lose the coin toss, I believe that there's a 50% chance you don't see the ball again. So there's just so many things working against you. At least you go out on your own terms, and you were aggressive about it, is my opinion. And honestly, I think ones are going to come into play over the next couple of weeks, because I think this is going to get so much attention that you're going to see. I think you're going to see the change at the end of games where these coaches are going to go for two.
I agree with absolutely everything you said there. I think the defensive-minded mentality of their coach, Raheem Morris, came into play just for that split second. Defensive coaches play it more closer to the vest on average. And I'm pretty sure 24 hours later, he would like to have that back. He may not say it publicly, but I think he would like to have that one back, in my opinion.
Well, I think the Kansas City one is obvious. That was a bonehead move. When you've got the Reed going out saying, "I'm just glad he did it." Of course, he was glad he did it. That was a no-brainer. You do put the whole game in the hands of one play in that situation. You're on the road. You're facing a dynasty. You're facing the best quarterback in the league. There's so many things against you, but you control this one thing. And I believe that was a huge mistake. New England, I thought that they should have gone for it. I mean, I know you've got the young quarterback and all, but you had the momentum on your side and such. I didn't see the Miami-Buffalo situation, but you would think with Tua in the lineup that you'd be a little bit more aggressive. And the Seattle situation, I thought that was I needed Seattle there, and I really wanted them to go for two. So I'm not unbiased. So they're at home, and they're moving the ball up and down the field on the Rams problem free. They're just shooting themselves in the foot. So I don't know about that one as much.
Yeah, I was probably 70-30 saying go for two for Seattle. I was probably 95-5. Miami had to go for two. It's a high-scoring game already. You've got Tua, like you mentioned. You've got weapons in the backfield that have worked. In a high-scoring game against a defense that's relatively average, I think you have to go for two for Miami. And the New England-Tennessee, I was kind of 50-50, but I think you and I both did the same thing, if I'm correct. We waited, and we took 3.5 on Sunday. Again, the value of waiting for a number. If it's not going to come off 3, just wait for it. So when they didn't go for 2, I was a little disappointed, because if they go for 2, we automatically win. But when they didn't do that, we kind of I think we lucked into the win anyway, because Drake May threw a weird pass after 15 seconds circling around just to get them in the position to go for that one. And then he immediately walked off the field. So in a sense, they themselves decided internally they weren't going for 2. They weren't mentally prepared to go for 2. That was a weird game to begin with between two bad teams. Ron, going for 2 to make... Oh, yeah. Well, I don't want to comment on the Giants very much, except for at the end when they could have, if they would have made the 2-point conversion, I would have covered the bet and swept the week. But it's the Giants, so I never would have expected it.
Well, just go looking back quickly at last week. Uh, Houston, or the Thursday night game, was interesting. I kind of felt like it was going to be that way. That line smelled fishy because the Jets should have never been favored. We picked up on that, and but Houston did cover the teaser, so that kind of went, according to plan. I would have had a bad week betting straight up. My plays were 4 and 7, so I was pretty hopeless looking back on things. But the teasers and parlays made the difference in 5 games, either 4 or 5 of those 11 games. So when you have that many games just going down to the wire with Plinko Lux, they say. That's one of the reasons why I've gravitated toward the teasers and parlays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We talked about
I don't have much to add.
Patriots, Titans. We touched on Chargers. I agree with what you said. I think they bought in 100%, and I think we know what to expect. They're going to win a certain way.
Yeah.
The Browns are obviously in trouble, and the Lions are a benefactor, which is nice. We'll talk about that. I'm not talking about Saints Panthers anymore, and we'll talk about the Saints.
I'd like to talk about the Saints all day, but keep going.
Well, we'll
Dallas,
talk about
Atlanta. Talk about Dallas,
it
Atlanta.
When we're talking about the trades, we'll bring it up.
Yeah.
Miami Bills, I didn't watch a lot of that game. I guess that game was about what I would have expected. Do you get anything on that game that I don't know?
Not really. The second week uncertainty about Tua. I just left it alone. Buffalo didn't. Josh Allen didn't look right the first half. I watched more of the first half than anything, and so they won a game that they didn't play their best, which might bode a little bit well for Buffalo. But they still have to shore up their defense.
I don't think the Bengals looked as good as the Raiders looked bad. What do you think?
Well, Burrow had threw 5 TD passes, so that confidence level with that offense and with his receiver and so on, that's really good right now. That's good to see. And they just we'll talk about the trade deadline, but they did a smart thing at the trade deadline as well. Vegas is a mess. Right now, they're firing coaches. It's almost like scapegoat time right away. Vegas is a colossal mess right now, and you have to be really careful. There's probably still bet for situations because the people who set lines are certainly not going to think Vegas is going to be public. But if you're going to bet Vegas, you have to bet them against certain teams because they're a mess.
Agreed. And it's. I think it's a. I don't even know why they're bothering at this point. I mean, the whole staff's going to be gone at the end of the year, I would think, wouldn't you?
It's hard to tell with that organization what they're doing and what they're not doing right now, but they should be winning over your city of Vegas. It should be a big deal that they're out of the Oakland area and they're into Las Vegas, and they're kind of a joke right now.
Indianapolis, Minnesota, that was an interesting game. I saw a fair amount of that game. And Flacco is flaccoing, as he usually does. I mean, it just seems like when he comes off the sidelines, he's just I think you got to sit that guy out for weeks and then put him in when you absolutely need him, and he'll do great. But once he gets, his role as starting quarterback, it seems like he just isn't the same quarterback anymore. And I don't think the Vikings are as good as I thought that they were. I don't know what their issue is, but Darnold is certainly, I think, Viking fans should be hoping that he can just be serviceable. I mean, I don't think he can. I don't think he's going to be above average at any point. And you're just praying that he can reach average as a consistency. What do you think?
I have a key point for each team, and I feel really comfortable with both of these points. For many, Sam Darnold's in the perfect situation. He's got Aaron Jones in the backfield, forever a great yards per carry guy, and he's got Jefferson, Addison, and everybody else to throw to. So he only needs to be league average, and the rest will assert itself offensively. So it's a perfect fit for Minnie, who has a pretty good staff, I think. I like their coach. As for Indianapolis, it doesn't matter whether it's Flacco, whether it's Richardson, whether it's anybody. This team is sorry for all Indy fans that are listening or watching. They are pathetically coached defensively. They had at one point 8 minutes of time of possession compared to 22 or something on the other side. They have the weakest time of possession figure week in and week out in the NFL. They cannot get off the field. They can't get any of their quarterbacks, Flacco included, enough playing time offensively to get rolling. I mean, what did they have? 23 minutes time of possession. I don't even know what it was, but it was a wide split last week, just like it was the first 3 weeks and 2 other weeks during the season. Their defense needs a brand new blow-up scheme where they actually attack instead of being so passive that everything works against them. 28 first downs, by the way, for Minnie, last I checked in that game.
Oh, sorry. I hadn't transferred my spreadsheet to this computer, so I was just trying to pull that up.
Yeah, it's I know Indy well now. It took me a little while, but I figured out where I need to go with Indy. Not that I had a preseason bet on the game, which won because it was Minnesota wasn't expected to be good this year, but it was a bad situation for Indy. But I didn't bet the game during the week. But I think I know what Indy is.
Yep. Washington, impressive again. I mean, it wasn't it wasn't a blowout by any means, and I don't know what they're going to do about Daniel Jones. They obviously don't trust him.
Just don't let me bet on the Giants. They had a situation that was probably the first or second best situation of all the ones that I had this week. Pretty good sample size. And even though they almost covered, I don't think they deserve to cover.
Well, they're dead last in my last 5 weeks chart.
Yeah, well, they're pretty low in the whole season, too.
And surprisingly enough, Chicago is second to last. And now they start playing real teams.
Yeah, that was, if you want to look at a surprise, because I had no opinion whatsoever in the Chicago-Arizona game. I didn't know how Chicago would react from the following week. I wasn't crazy about Arizona at home. They still have defensive holes. Chicago's a better defensive team. The margin of victory is surprising to me in that game.
Well, but that was the result of that ridiculous play at the end of the first half where they gave up the longest touchdown in NFL history under those circumstances. So that changed the whole complexion of the game. And there's obviously inner strife going on between players and coaches. And I think the wheels are coming off of that bus.
I think Chicago's talent is better than their record, but I think Chicago's coaching is holding them back.
I agree. There's something very wrong there, and it's not for lack of talent. We talked about the Rams Seahawks. That was about, the Rams defense, they let the Seahawks go up and down the field. They're getting away with murder with that defense somehow.
Still a work in progress. It's hard to name any of their defensive backs right now. So they have a formula offensively. Stafford, healthy, doing fine. He's got his receivers back, and he's got a running back that they're not afraid to use 20 times to keep that defense off the field.
Pittsburgh, Washington total is 45.5, 46. Lions, Packers. I mean, I do want to say this, and I noticed this before the game, is that I honestly believe, and you got to pay attention to this going forward. I honestly believe the Packers or the Lions are in the Green Bay Packers' heads, and I think it's going to be a problem for a while. Uh, the comments that were coming out before the game were just atypical of a Green Bay team. Basically whining about how the Lions run up the score, making comments about the team. And that's before the game was played. And then they had things to say after the game, and it's evident to me that this team's a little young, mentally overwhelmed, and the Lions are in their heads. Frankly, they beat them 3 straight times in Lambeau for the first time in even your lifetime, Ron.
Lem Barney, bring back Lem Barney. I will say this about the Lions. I just don't know how you feel about it, but they still do some stupid things with going forward at inopportune times. It's like they're just gung ho on everything, and they're just not going to change. That's who they are, and they have the personnel to get away with it a lot of the time. These fake punts, these going for it on 4th and 5s, and stuff like that. Normally, they get away with it, but at some point against a really good team, it's going to cost them a game.
The Rams are trading Devarius White to the Ravens. Jesus, rich get richer.
Yeah, it's amazing. If you count Hopkins to Kansas City, I mean, why are you doing these things? Why do you trade with Howie Roseman before the draft? Why do you trade and you make Kansas City and Baltimore better? Sometimes I just don't understand the mentality of the teams that are always drafting how come certain teams are always drafting in the bottom 10? How come they can never get better?
Jaguars and the Eagles, that was about what I expected it to be until it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the sheer stupidity with the coaching, I don't know how they overcome it. I mean, and what I'm noticing is that Philadelphia, where do you have Philadelphia right now?
There's still a big 4 and a large gap between 5 through 10 is where Philly is. Philly's not moving, and they're not even close to the top 4 right now. There's a top 4, and then teams like Philly, Cincy, and others.
Yeah, see, I got a problem. Philadelphia is climbing up, but they're not beating any quality teams.
Well, I mean, Jacksonville had 2 feet out the door. They were done in that game. They didn't do a thing to get into that game, so it was very strange.
And Tampa Bay played exactly the kind of game that I would have expected if they had Godwin and Evans in the lineup.
Yeah,
they would if they were at full strength, it would not have surprised me in the least to see Tampa Bay with a chance to win the game.
It wouldn't have surprised me. Actually, they would have won each of the last 2 weeks if they were at full strength. They're playing that well. They're not a great team defensively, but then it is Mahomes and it was raining and all that other stuff. But they're exceeding expectations for me. There's no question about it. And they played hard, and they're going to continue to play hard, and their schedule is going to soften up. I wouldn't rule them out right now. They just don't have consistency at wide receiver, and they're trying to deal with it.
Yeah, I like that club. They've I wonder where the hell they're rating now.
Yeah, I have them,
they're middle.
Yeah, dead middle.
Just over, but
yeah.
That's about all I got from last week. I'd like to put it behind me. It was just god-awful annoying with the Saints losing outright. That mucked things up for me a little bit.
Yeah, be careful with those money line favorites, especially on the road. I know road favorites have done well this year, but New Orleans, that's a different animal.
What really bothers me is I really, really like the Chargers. I should have pressed them up. And as I mentioned, I started to really like the Lions when the Green Bay started just whining and pissing and moaning before the game. I said they're in their heads.
Yeah.
But I didn't get any advantage to it. So,
yeah. If you're trying to, if you don't feel, this is a general comment, if somebody doesn't feel they're in the zone, I think they should pull back on games rather than add games. I mean, just be careful. Just wait till you're in that sweet spot when you're seeing different things out of different teams, when you're really comfortable with your numbers. Numbers might say one thing, but then you look at it and you say, well, wait a second, this guy's hurt, or this guy's coming back from injury, or this matchup isn't exactly the way I want it. I would just err on the conservative side if you're not feeling it.
the Vikings signed a kicker.
They put another kicker went on IR today. What do you want to do first, trades or talk a little bit about this coming week?
Let's do the trades. Let's start with the most significant one. I was amazed that Dallas went out there and picked up Minga from Carolina. I mean, that should really change the course of the NFC East, shouldn't it?
Well, I talked to the guys at Back to the Future, and they said the time-space continuum has been altered. So we have to be really careful about getting near like electrical wires and stuff like that, because a DeLorean may come out of the sky because of this move. Jerry Jones, another fantastic proactive move, and giving up a 4th-round pick. Hey, why not?
Yeah, those are a dime a dozen. I mean,
yeah,
it's just obviously preposterous. Cowboys are going absolutely nowhere. Dak is on the IR for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there giving away 4th-round draft picks for a player that the team was going to probably cut anyway.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't part of their rotation most of the time. So very interesting move, huh? It's good to start with that one, get that one out of the way.
God, I meant to look this up. Somebody look this up for me. How many games does Lattimore play each season? It just seems like the good news is he hasn't allowed a one-on-one touchdown since 2021. And he averages under like a negative 13% expected completion percentage against whoever he's covering. He's an awesome player. Ron and I have always loved him.
Mm-hmm.
But how many games a year does this guy play? It just seems like he hasn't seen a half a season in how long?
Yeah, he's one of those difference makers when he's on the field and when he's off the field. This is an added bonus for Washington in a way that maybe can't be quantified, but his institutional memory, his experience. Remember, Washington's turning over the roster. They drafted a lot of players to change the culture of their team. They weren't necessarily they were rated players on my draft board, but they weren't necessarily the highest rated players because they wanted a certain kind of blue collar work ethic to get Washington relevant again. And they're relevant in a hurry all of a sudden. I think Lattimore, even off the field, brings some tips to the team that can't be quantified in terms of the player stuff. So I kind of like the move for 2 reasons, and I hope he's healthy.
Well, I'm fighting a bloody nose here, so now I've got a big problem.
Somebody hit you in the mouth, man.
No, I had this happen a couple nights ago. I actually should have gone to the hospital, and I didn't. So
I don't like to hear that.
Williams to the Steelers. That's a good thing for them, isn't he? Or is he not going to contribute?
Well, yeah, he will help their team because Pittsburgh, that was a desperate need spot. And they also got an edge rusher too, Preston Smith from Green Bay, who didn't play much this year, but over time he's done fairly well. So he adds another body to the pass rushing contingent. You can't go wrong adding another edge rusher. So Pittsburgh, who's seldom in buying mode before the trade deadline, smells a possible division title, or at least heavy competition to get there. So the double move of improving on both sides of the ball is pretty good. I think Mike Williams, because he's been lightly used, maybe finally healthy. The guy has battled injuries the last 2-3 years. That's part of the problem, is that he wasn't worth anything to the Chargers because he couldn't stay on the field. Well, his snap count has been fairly low for the New York Jets. So I think he comes to Pittsburgh relatively healthy. Let's see what he can do. I think it's an asset.
Devarius Smith, the Lions fans are very excited, and they tried to get more than a 5th round pick, and we wouldn't give it to him. And Dallas may give away those 4th round picks easily, but we won't. I think it's a great pickup for Detroit.
Well, it certainly doesn't hurt. Everything they do to help their roster doesn't hurt. I wish they would have picked up a guy like Latimer, because they need that same kind of tutelage in the backfield right now to help their young cornerbacks. But it's a good move. I mean, you want to improve their pass rush too. It's been start and stop a little bit. They had a good pass rush, I believe, last week against Jordan Love.
Well, since it's a tie, I just want to comment. This is really strange. When I had my bloody nose, it was really, really bad the other night, and I looked it up, and we all think that you're supposed to put Kleenex in your nose. You're not. And we all think you're supposed to lean your head back. You're not supposed to lean your head back. You're supposed to sit up forward. So, and not put Kleenex in your nose. You're supposed to pinch the end of your nose. And I don't feel like talking like that.
Yeah.
Or put ice on the top of your nose to change the capillaries. So we're going to give you positive medical EV information today.
I can tell you that in my younger days, luckily it hasn't happened lately. When I spent time in Las Vegas, I would occasionally come up with a bloody nose due to the air there in Vegas. Something weird there.
Well, it's okay.
But anyway, back to football. I have two more teams to discuss. Herbert goes to the running back. Herbert goes to Cincinnati. Moss is on IR. Chase Brown, they don't want to overuse him. This is an excellent move because Herbert career 4.9 yards per carry. I think it's a subtly under the radar good move for Cincinnati. And that team is contending for a playoff berth all of a sudden because they're hot. And we talked about Burrow earlier. And just to reiterate, the move made a week or two ago, Kansas City Hopkins, the two moves that they made, Juju Smith-Schuster and Hopkins at wide receiver, are moves not only about their talent level, but it's about their hands. Smith-Schuster generally is a good catcher of the ball, fewer drops. Hopkins doesn't drop the ball. A lot of the problems Kansas City had last year were with drop balls. Even Worthy, their rookie sensation and their speedster, he's going to be hot and cold. He's going to run hot and cold because he's not a great route runner right now, and he came into the league with some drops at the University of Texas. So this shores them up, and you could see Mahomes' confidence in Hopkins in just his second game with the team. So the rich got richer, both in Kansas City, also with Baltimore today.
You think Herbert will play on Thursday, or is that too fast?
Running back, probably not too fast. He's not going to know much of the playbook. So, you're probably going to see 5 to 10 snaps. Hopefully. I mean, the thing about running backs is Chase Brown was on his own last week because, they had the injury to Moss. And so they had to overuse him. And now they're in a short week. So they'd love to get touches from other guys on the team. So if he's ready to go, he's ready to go. It's as John McKay of the Trojans used to say, the football doesn't weigh that much. Not too hard to carry it.
I just said, Lamar had only 19 passes last week and 280 yards somehow.
Yeah, it's amazing what Henry, the running back, does to open up the offense.
Yeah. They're still averaging 7+ yards per play.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a lot of good things. They've shored up that run defense. It's one of the best in the league. Their pass defense is lagging behind a little bit. They don't have the cover corners that they used to. And, of course, they're playing schemes that always get them in trouble in the third and fourth quarter. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily going away. So if we transition to this week, Baltimore is playing a hot quarterback right off the bat with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game. We got to breeze through this because this nose is getting worse.
Yeah. Okay, we will do that.
Don't forget, everybody, that the Giants-Panthers is played in Germany. It's such an ugly game that nobody would host it here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, due to the thriftiness of the NFL, the players and coaches only got a one-way ticket, so they have to find their way back.
I got nothing on that game right now.
Yeah.
This Bills-Colts game is going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, that's good. That's going to be fascinating. You know what I just said about Indy? They have to find a way to get off the field. They actually have two situational factors in their favor. So when I do the matchup analysis, I've just got to figure out how long Indy's defense is going to be on the field, because there are two factors in the Colts' favor in this game.
Minnesota at the Jaguars.
Yeah, the Jaguars quit in the game, and then they got back into the last week's game. But I got to tell you, the Jaguars are fighting fatigue. They played back-to-back in London. They didn't fare well. They haven't fared well much of late anyway, and they haven't had their bye week yet. At some point, fatigue is going to come into a factor with Jacksonville.
Boy, this Steelers-Commanders game, that's the game of the – well, boy, I guess it's not the game of the week, but it's the game number 2. It's the warm-up.
Yeah, I like the game. I don't have an opinion right now, but it'll be a fascinating matchup.
Well, I think obviously Pittsburgh is extremely teaser-friendly in this situation. Atlanta and the Saints, thank goodness I can leave that game alone.
So here's the point I wanted to make. You do models and you don't do power ratings. Some people do power ratings and they don't do models. I use my matchup analysis as my model, and I do my power ratings. I want to say this for the record, is that most models or power ratings are not necessarily going to say, oh, a coach is worth a half a point or a coach is worth a point or something like that. I don't know if your models have anything to do with coaching. Do they?
No.
Okay. And I understand that because it can be subjective, but I will say that in college, when I publish my bottom 5 coaches poll, I automatically subtract power rating points and wins from bottom 5 coaches, and it has served me very, very well over the years. Same thing with top 5 coaches. I did it with Bill Snyder of Kansas State all the time. If I projected the team to win 6 wins, I automatically moved it up to 7. If I projected 7, I automatically moved it up to 8, because that coach was easily worth a game in terms of season wins. And I will do the same with college coaches that are in my bottom 5, and it generally works out very, very well. I bring that up because I do not factor in coaches at all in my power ratings from week to week. It's a very mechanical formula, and it has nothing to do with coaches. The only time coaches could be factored in would be when you set the number in August or beginning of September, if you want to do a little bit in terms of how you want to set a power rating. I haven't done it in the NFL. I'm just wondering out loud if I should start doing it for the bottom 2 coaches in the NFL or something like that, because Dennis Allen burns money every year.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is it my imagination, or is there becoming a wider divide between the top NFL coaches and an average coach and the worst in the league? I don't remember it ever being this blatant, where the best are just so painfully obviously the best, and the worst are painfully obviously the worst.
In college, the best coaches also win against the spread. In the NFL, it's not necessarily true, because take Andy Reid, for example. They don't win by margin, but they find ways to win. And that's the mark of a good or great coach as well. They're inflated already because they're such a public team. So I wouldn't do it from that end. On the other hand, most of the time, the NFL has a strong way of weaning out the bad coaches. They're only bad coaches for a couple of years, and then they're out of the system. Atlanta's coaches last year, who's now Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator. Sometimes you're better as a coordinator than you are as a head coach. We've seen that in business. We see that in sports. Sometimes you're not you're not good enough to be the CEO of the whole company. So bad coaches get weaned out pretty fast. And Nick Sirianni may be the exception because the team keeps winning in spite of himself. But a lot of these bad coaches, you only get them for a certain amount of time, and then they're gone.
I agree with Jerry Betts. There's no value on Washington in this at this spread for sure.
Yeah, and Bertie's comment, yes, I do factor in offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. And of course, every model that's ever existed needs to account for special teams. And if you say you don't account for special teams, then I'm not interested in your model, because the bottom 5 and top 5 special teams makes a difference in terms of if you see trends over time and nothing changes with their personnel, then you have to factor that in.
The only 3 turnovers all season for Washington.
It's amazing with all that for turnover. They had 0 the first 3 weeks.
I was going to give this guy a pat in the back until he had to follow that up with ranked number 1.
Well, ranked number 1 in turnovers, maybe.
Right, but if they only have 3, of course they're number 1.
Actually, they're only +5 in turnover margin.
We overall got you, City by the Bay.
Yeah. Buffalo, Pittsburgh tops in turnover margin. Same with the Lions. I think they're +11. That's Goff. Goff is so careful.
I think he's a good candidate for MVP at this point.
Yeah, there's about 4 of them.
Where are we down to? San Francisco gets healthy again. Mason back, CMC back, right?
Yeah, that's what they're saying, that he's healthy, and they catch. They're on a bye, and Tampa's on a short week, so situation should stack up for a San Francisco win. Again, Baker Mayfield will have success against San Francisco's secondary, in my opinion. The only question is, he still has the same group of wide receivers, and there's a fatigue factor. Baker's going to come to play. We know that. But, can those wide receivers take advantage of matchups against San Francisco's secondary? Because otherwise, they're not in the game.
Patriots, Bears, you got anything? I just think I think the Bears are a mess.
This is kind of a weird one for me because I have a future play on this, and I've been getting great value. This is not necessarily a great value game because I don't even know why. I guess I'm looking at my notes. New England, tremendous fatigue watch at this point. New coach, no early bye really bothers me. Back-to-back road games. They also played overseas. So I have Chicago -6 in a play made in August. So I suppose I like Chicago -6.
Jeez, that are a lot of negatives there. Titans, Chargers.
Not much on this game. I think fundamentally the Chargers are going to play more fundamentally sound. Is that worth 7.5 points? It's probably worth a pass.
Cooper Rush starting for Dallas.
Yeah, okay, so throw me a number now. What do you make the difference between Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush?
3.5? 3?
Yeah, I'm struggling with the number because when he subbed a year or 2 ago, it was a little bit ugly, but they won all their games.
They did.
Remember when Dak was down like weeks 2 to 6 or something? They won all those particular games. This is a little tougher matchup for them, but they're at home. They've won consistently at home against Philadelphia, but they're not the same team.
They haven't won a home game all year, have they?
I'll trust you on that. The other factor in this is Kellen Moore was Dallas's offensive coordinator last year, and now he's Philly's offensive coordinator. So a lot of moving parts in this one. I think the line is higher than I would have said it. Well, it's definitely higher than I would have said it.
Jets Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are better than we realized, and
yeah,
I don't know how far it's going to take them.
Yeah, as of right now, I have almost nothing on this particular game. I think there's one negative situation for Arizona, but it's not painfully negative.
Boy, this Lions-Texans game, I mean, it's such a doozy. I mean, the Lions have covered, 7 or 8 in a row? And I mean, they're over 75% covering over the last, 3 seasons. It's preposterous.
Entertaining game, yeah.
Goff has 28 touchdowns and 24 interceptions or incompletions over the recent stretch. First quarterback ever to be over 80% 6 games straight with at least 100 attempts. I mean, Amon St. Brown, have you noticed that stat?
Yeah, he hasn't every catchable ball he's caught.
Every intended target. He's 30 in a row. I didn't even know they kept those stats. 30 in a row seems insane. I mean, what's the record?
That might be the record. Antoine Bolden did something good years ago, but the stat wasn't invented.
It's just insanity. And hopefully Collins is back for the Texans. I'm looking forward to this game. What a great Sunday night game.
Joey corrected me, so I apologize. Kellen Moore was with the Chargers. Previously, he was with Dallas. So that's good. This is Detroit. Detroit's playing much better on the road. We talked about that last week. This is their 4th road game in a 5-week stretch. Houston's pass defense, 55%.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So This is going to be an incredible test because DeMeco Ryans, we know he can coach. We know that the Lions play a little bit tighter pass coverage than every team in the NFL. I don't think we have Cleveland, the Jets, and Houston as the top 3 in terms of allowing completion percentage. So they get more in your face than any of the other teams. So this is going to be a very interesting test for the Lions.
Hopkins 100 plus? How is that possible? 30 is ridiculous.
100 plus yards, maybe. I don't know about 100 catches.
I don't know.
Yeah, model says bet Lions. My number is where it should be. I opened the Lions 3.5, and I think they went from 3 to 3.5.
Yeah, you already know that when the line's sitting at 3.5 that it's too low. So games don't go to 3.5 otherwise. Dolphins, Rams.
Well, it's hard to set a power number for either team right now. I have 2 weeks of data with the Rams with Kupp and Puka, although Puka got ejected early in that game because he threw a punch. But they have 2 weeks with, and obviously they weren't going to sell any of these players, or I don't think they're going to sell any of these players as we're 6 minutes away from the end of the trading deadline, because the Rams are certainly invested in winning the division now. And Miami, I'm having trouble setting their power rating. So offhand, the Monday night situation favors the Rams, but the matchup analysis may favor Tua. We'll have to wait and see. I have to do the work on that.
Yeah, I was ahead on some things this week, but I'm a little bit later to the party looking ahead to next week, just because I know I'm going to have fewer games. And I don't think anything that I have interest in is crucially going to, move against me. So just taking some more time.
Yeah, well, and some lines you're waiting for, you should be waiting for numbers if something doesn't strike you right away. But I don't know. It's Tuesday. I'm not complete. I never complete my matchup analysis by Tuesday. I just have the power ratings and I have the situations, as most of the situations that I want to look at in tow right now. So I know certain slants of where I'm going to lean, but I don't have the complete matchup analysis ready.
All right. Do you have anything else to say? Because I don't feel like I'm contributing well because my attention is diverted
Yeah.
with this nose. I'm trying to figure out where the hell I go to get it cauterized.
I think I'll try to write an article analyzing the trades that have been made today and over the last week that I think are significant. Otherwise, maybe you'll see us comment, or you'll see me comment on Twitter X whenever there's another late breaking news, because it does affect season wins and it does affect we're talking about the teams that got better. Let's talk about the sellers. I mean, we're talking about, does Cleveland make any other moves? What about the Saints? Do they make other moves? Do they sell on the season right now? Because that's where you make your money, when teams are selling.
Yeah, I don't understand why more teams aren't selling. It didn't sell.
Well, it's not in Dallas's DNA to actually sell. Instead, they went out and got a wide receiver that you talked about, Mingo. But in reality, Dallas should be selling, because at the best, they're going to back into the playoffs this year. And if they back into the playoffs, how long do you think they'd last? They don't match up against Detroit. They don't match up against San Francisco.
I mean, the Saints could have sold more.
Yes, they could. There's no question about that. Carolina could keep selling.
Yeah, but that's like going to a garage sale, like right as they're packing up.
The Giants announced just recently that they're not selling their linebacker, who was on the trade block and would have been a good get for people. And the Giants probably should be in sell mood. I mean, the Giants have to do everything possible to get leverage to get a quarterback in next year's draft.
Well,
They will be drafting a quarterback.
Miami could have gotten rid of Hill.
Yeah, that would really be selling. I mean, they hope that the combination of Tua, Hill, and Waddle still propels them if they make the right draft moves. They should sell other players. I think they should keep Hill.
I don't know. There's something wrong with that guy.
And Vegas should be sell mode.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't. I would have loved to have seen Detroit get him, but they would have wanted a first round and probably a third round for him. And I think that would have been too much. What do you think?
Yeah. For Hill?
No, for Crosby from the Raiders.
Oh, for Crosby? Yeah, first rounder has to be in the discussion for Crosby.
They wanted a lot. All right, well, I'm going to I appreciate all the advice in the comments, and I just got out of the shower, and the whole change of humidity and stuff must have hit it. So,
all right. Well, we'll have Cris feeling better by Thursday, and we'll attack the NFL slate once more with Ted on Thursday. Anything else you want to ask us? Go ahead and enter our YouTube chat or talk to us online, and we'll see you Thursday.
That sounds good. Thanks for joining. Sorry, I was a dud. All right, bye.